This is the Level Up Engineering Podcast, where we talk with some of the most successful engineering leaders who reveal actionable management insights that help you take your developer team to the next level. This episode is brought to you by Coding Sans, a software development agency building web applications from design to delivery with React, Node.js, and Angular. Check them out at codingsans.com.
Welcome to the first ever offline recording of the Level Up Engineering Podcast. We are trying out this new format, so please go ahead and share your feedback so we know whether or not it's great, mediocre, perfect, or needs some feedback. And we are always open to your feedback. And with that said, I am Karolina Tóth, and my guest today is Ákos Kapui from Shapr3D. He is the VP of Engineering, and before that, he was Engineering Director at Skyscanner, and before that, he was CTO and co-founder at Distinction, which was later acquired by Skyscanner. And he also holds a master's degree in computer science.
That's true, yeah.
Awesomeness. Thank you so much. So let us start by first introducing you. What do we need to know about you?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me and inviting me. I'm super excited. Always good to be the guinea pig in new formats. I'm Ákos, as you introduced me already. What I usually say that I'm a software engineer by degree. I'm a hacker in my soul, and I'm a manager by role. So I ended up doing a lot of management nowadays. Today, I am leading the engineering organization at Shapr3D, and before that, I was co-founding a startup, mobile software development startup in Hungary. We've been building mobile apps for other companies, so it was more like an agency rather than a startup. But we ended up doing a lot of like great products for our own as well. After 4 years, we ended up being acquired by Skyscanner. Skyscanner was one of our partners, and we built mobile apps for Skyscanner as well. And at that time, Skyscanner was a relatively big business, so it was 400 people already and a big market share. But their primary product was on the web. It was already clear at that time that travel is going to be mobile only or very much mobile focused, and they didn't have any expertise, so decided to acquire one of their partners, and it was us, Distinction. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the deal was so good that we could not turn it down. We won it, but couldn't, and the opportunity itself was great. So they acquired us not just to have 30 people, but to bring in talent and building and forming a company strategy around mobile. So our goal, my responsibility, and the responsibility of my co-founder was to turn Skyscanner into a mobile-first company. So that's the journey. That's the reason we joined. I spent 3 years there. I don't say we accomplished everything in that period of time, but it definitely was a journey. The whole company grown to more than 1,000 people. I was responsible around 100 people, like in six cities or countries across the world, and I was responsible for the mobile engineering for Skyscanner. Then I left for a sabbatical and paternity leave for a short period of time, maybe a year or so. And then 2 years ago, I joined Shapr3D. At that time, it was already on a good track, going high up on the hockey stick. As far as I remember, when I talked to the István, the co-founder, I think they had 12 people altogether. When I joined 2 months later, it was already 20. So I was, I think, employee number 20. And now we have already 100. So 2 years ago, it was more or less 20. Now we are closing to reach the 100 line. So it was quite a journey. In the same way, the number of engineers also grown from like 7 to 40, 50, something like that.
Nice.
So that's so far.
Thank you for that. With that said, let's hear a little bit about the company. The Coding Sans CTO asked me to mention that company started in this very room. So good thing we are recording here. What do we need to know about Shapr3D?
Yeah, so Shapr3D is a 3D design tool. So it's called a CAD tool, and most people might say it's a boring business or it's a boring industry for one reason, because most of the products that exist today and popular today are old businesses. So most of our competitors are 30 years old businesses, pretty big ones. So it's like all of them are on the stock market and they have a lot of revenue and all these things. It's not like the whole industry is not changing on a very fast pace. I would say the inertia is high there for many reasons, but each one had the idea that something that was cool and great 30 years ago might not be that great today. So he had the passion of like, I want to change this industry and create something iconic that will form the industry for the next 30 years. So that's the plan. We had a good run so far. So managed to release the application in 2016, and then our primary product was based on iPads, and still our primary product is running on iPads only. The market was relatively small at that time. Now it's growing, and now we are moving forward to release application to all desktop platforms, so Windows and Mac OS as well, and create that iconic product that we all wish to have.
Right. So. Since you've joined, what were the challenges of this growth?
Yeah, so I remember at that time it was like relatively small. The company is much smaller than I got used to in Skyscanner. Like it was 1,000 people at the time I left, and we had like 8 engineers at the time I joined. So the role of like senior executive or engineering manager was completely different to what I used to. But given as I mentioned in my soul, I'm a hacker, so it was the right exercise to get started with. So at that time, and holistically speaking, I usually think of engineering management as a problem solver function. So whatever happens, whatever breaks in a company, it comes to me. I am responsible for making sure that things don't break very often, and if they break, we can learn from those. So there's an English phrase I found of like the bucket stops with me, and I think of myself as whatever happens, I'm responsible for that. And I'm not saying I'm solving the problem in most cases, but if release a buggy product to production, it was me not creating an environment where people can confidently do things like on fast pace and release things. If someone decides to leave from the company because something was not great, then it was my responsibility not creating an environment where people can like stay for longer, or at least talk about their problems and discuss whether there's an opportunity. I'm not saying we should keep everyone for forever, because there is like, especially if you're such a high growth, doubling your size every year, there's so many things that can change and might not be that attractive to other people who joined relatively early. But because of that, it's super exciting. So there are a lot of people who join in early days, like the co-founder or the founder, and the first engineers who joined, and when they see that a lot of new people join who might be more experienced than they've been, and how you solve these conflicts in that setup, how you prepare for the additional conflicts that might come, how you build up new functions that haven't existed before. Like engineering was a primary function in Shapr3D from early days. István, the co-founder, was coding a lot all days, all night. That has changed, and that was already in different shape when I joined. But design function, product function, marketing function, these are things that evolve over time depending on maturity, and all comes with different problems. So going back to your original question, like what was the problem there? So I think of the very first thing I wanted to solve is making sure that we can hire people who are equally good or even better than the people who have been there for a while. And it's not easy, especially if you are small, your brand is not big, and you have to go like to the wide and like bring in those people yourself. I called this strategy at that time Moneyball Recruiting. You might have heard, I've seen the movie with Brad Pitt, the Moneyball. It was a baseball team, and they use B players or C players to build a team. And this, like, all the big companies are hunting world-class engineering and world-class talent. There is a niche market, like too many needs, too many appetite to hire. So you can't just do all the things that Google, Facebook, big companies do, and in the market you have to do something else. And I called it like Moneyball Recruitment. It was a coin that I heard, read, and used. So it's not coming from me, just for full transparency. So what I did, for example, I started to scrape the university website for essays and thesis project and trying to find the people who might not have ended up in LinkedIn or somewhere else as a profile, but they could be exciting, especially given Shapr3D is operating in a complex domain. So like it's mathematically complex, it's engineering-wise complex. It's not just like building a product. There's a lot of details in depth in our applications. So it was important to hire people who are excited about building and solving those mathematical problems and not just creating great interfaces, for example. And those people tend to be not that visible in the startup market as well. So I did a lot of like really like writing the code, getting like couple of thousands of essays and going through one by one and finding those people who have not been seen in the market. It wasn't that successful, to be honest. It's at that time I realized that recruitment is a function that we need. Not shortly after I joined, I started to put together the requirements of like how to build up the recruitment organization. Again, it might not have to relate completely to an engineering leadership and management, but if you are the single most important function for a recruitment perspective, then it's your job to make sure that there is a highly performant recruitment funnel. You can interview people with high confidence. You can hire people. You can the people who join can actually understand what you want to do, and they can be onboarded at a relatively fast pace. If they don't turn out to be good, then you can tell them that they are not good and or the match is not great. So you can separate ways of if things are not going well, then you can help them to improve and these kind of things. There are a lot of different things around growing. And my first, like most important critical job was to making sure that we can hire people and a lot of people. We can interview a lot of people. We know what good is. We don't know what bad is. We know what type of profile can match to our culture and what can't. So this was the most impactful part of the first couple of months.
Thank you for sharing that. I actually just thought back to episode 3 of Level Up Engineering, where I talked with Rich Archbold from Intercom. And he also mentioned that one of the most important parts of scaling is making sure that your hiring processes are up to par with your expectations. And so you can find the people who are in that niche where you're looking for. Besides the building of a recruitment process or teaming up with recruiters, how do you know if someone is your type of engineer? What is your engineering culture like?
Yeah, it's like a lot of good materials online, like how to interview people, and there are a lot of things around on the web, like how to do things well. My view on this is that they don't matter if they are not related to your environment. So I usually start from scratch, like what is the problem and what needs to be solved. In our case, we had good engineers with very good depths of knowledge already. But if you scale the recruitment, you interview 100 people a month or a quarter, you have to have more people who do these interviews, because the most senior people who've been building software previously, now they're interviewing, and most of the time spending interviewing. Now you can think of like how to train those people. And when you're training those people, it takes more resources than less resources before it ends up. But if you don't do that, then what can happen is that different people start to make different conclusions. I personally think that recruitment is a subjective exercise. People want to make it less subjective. They create a lot of frameworks around it, but at the end of the day, it's like me personally think that this individual can make success, make great achievement accomplished in the company. And because I am like this kind of individual, I think, and I'm successful, people who are similar to me can also be successful. And that's a limitation, because if you only make a decision whether that individual can be successful or not, then you will end up hiring a lot of similar people that similar to your character. But you have to have a lot of different roles in the company. And I've seen, for example, the CEO, he made a lot of decisions, and he was also looking for the entrepreneurial spirit that makes company and early successful. But when you reach a level where you need another 20 people, you cannot, and we shouldn't look for that entrepreneurial spirit, because that's a different type of role. You need people who are very consistent. You have the experience and stamina to go through different things, who are happy to write documents around how to build things and push back if something is not going in the right direction. Entrepreneurs tend to be like very active and proactive in building things, shipping things, but it doesn't matter if you ship the wrong thing or if you ship things and then they break. So my view on, like, I usually write down things, and that was not very common in Shapr beforehand. If you have 8 people working together or 20 people, like, it's just easier to speak. Like, you roll over to the desk and then you discuss. When you're making decisions separately and not in the same room, and you want that decision to be very similar and use the similar techniques, then you have to write down things. And writing is important because it also helps you to be very specific. In words, you can say, like, okay, we do this, and it's easy, just like, you will know if he knows that exercise. And if you write it down, it's like, you reread it. Like, if you're just like talking about nonsense and like generic things, then you reread it and like, okay, this is not helping at all. For example, I called at that time interview packs. So every single positions we had interview packs. Interview pack consisted of 4 different artifacts, materials. One is homework, second of depth of experience, like what are the requirements of that role and what we look for, and 2 parts are culture related. And all of the roles have had very specific requirements of what to look for, what bad looks like, what good looks like, what excellence look like. And we haven't looked for like check marks for all the areas, but for if you hire a junior individual, like inexperienced individual, we look for like motivation a lot. And it doesn't really matter whether he knows the stack we use, because if he is really capable or she's really capable, then he can pick up those learnings quite fast. But if she's not motivated enough, then it's not going to work. And that's something very important. I think companies should be very specific of what type of profiles they look for, what other people can be successful, and be explicit, share those contents with the company, see how people agree or disagree with that. If you do this decision yourself, it's going to be like very homogeneous or homogeneous setup at the end. And that's go. So it has to be inclusive. You have to include the people who made decisions in the past and make sure that they also align with the journey. CEO at that time was very vocal on what is good and what is bad. Sometimes I agreed, sometimes I completely disagreed.
Nice, thank you. So let's steer our conversation to the bigger picture of scaling. First of all, I would like to ask you, you mentioned that you were employee number 20.
Yeah.
And you also mentioned that you were, as the new kid on the block, you were dissimilar in the fact that you were used to the fact that notes need to be taken. Would you say that it's around that size when a company needs to kind of shift its focus to hiring more dependable and people who are capable of doing kind of tedious work? Is that around the number where perhaps our listeners should be aware of perhaps hiring for more consistency?
Yeah. So again, I'm also steering away from a different perspective to this question. My view is there's no certain answer of like whether 20 people is the right amount of time to start be more precise. It depends a lot on your growth ambition, like that. And if you're not growing at all, like doesn't really matter whether it's 20 or 21 or 40. When you are even small, but you're doubling each year, that comes with a completely different setup. Usually think of management, like need for management for cases when, if you ask an individual whether she or he receives enough feedback about her job, if the answer is no for multiple people, I think that you are in a problem where there's not enough like management and structure in your organization. Individuals, like smart, rational, and capable individuals want to do great things. However, sometimes they don't know what great is. And it is very important to help them understand whether what they delivered, what they did, what they said is great or not great, or it matching the expectation or not. This is the best tool set to help individuals to grow. And usually I do a lot of interviews. I think I've did maybe a couple of hundreds in Shapr, and again, close to 500.
So wait, do you still do a lot of interviews as VP of engineering?
I do. I meet all the people still who like. Wow. I had 10 interviews this week. It's a lot of like. I think in a growing organization, 30% of your time should be allocated management time on helping people to understand how can they how can they join the company, what they like, interview them, whether they are a good fit or not, and if they're not good fit, then allocate time to give the feedback back to them. So I'm always, so whenever we hire 1% of people applying, so it's a lot of resources goes into interviewing, but we also try to be consistent in giving feedback. So people who weren't a good fit for our current journey or at this time, we always try to give them feedback. And my views on that is I'm always available. So if someone, like, the recruiter helps to write and feedback the thoughts, but she also like mentions that if you need more like details on specific around the problem set, then Ákos is available to talk. And then this week I think talked to 3 people just about the perception in the interview.
Wow. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are really grateful if they hear that this is something that companies actually do.
Yeah, obviously I tend to think we're doing great, but there's always like space for improvements, and always like we make mistakes as well. So I'm sure we've done a lot. But my philosophy is that if they invested time to learn about your company, it's just the minimum that you give that amount of feedback that you received, and be specific on the reasoning. If it's a technical mismatch, like he, she, or he doesn't know or doesn't have that experience, that's easy. If it's a cultural mismatch, that's a lot harder to discuss, and it's very hard to talk about these in person. Like telling someone that doesn't have the intrinsic motivation for personal growth, and this explaining why it's important and why we think he or she doesn't have that, it's not an easy exercise, but it's useful, it's worthwhile, because that helps in recruitment overall, because those people who had a great experience in your funnel will talk to other people. They might come back a year later and would want to try again. Maybe they improved. We hired people, a lot of people who were no in the first run, and then they came back later and they developed their skills and
with an improved set of skills. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Not sure what was the original question, which I'm not sure I answered. But
yeah, you did. You said you basically said it depends on when you should be looking for those managerial types of colleagues.
Yeah. So how I started is that if you see that your people are not comfortable in their role, and they're not delivering, and there's a consistent no answer for the question whether you have received enough feedback for the past 6 months, that signals there are problems unsaid, there are problems unresolved, and there is lack of ownership for these kind of problems. As I said, managers have to be responsible for any kind of things, and they won't solve the problem on their own, but whenever there's something that is like falling behind 2 chairs, or nobody is really willing to take care of that, then it's the responsibility of the manager. And then the higher you are on the management track, the more you get around those problems.
Right. Thank you so much. I just have to share this. I am preparing a presentation about psychological safety for tomorrow, and a lot of the things that you are telling me really resonate with the atmosphere of what psychological safety looks like.
And you might be like so 1 out of 50 people in the interview are confident that they receive feedback about the work they do. This is the ratio. So it's like most people who work in companies in this country, and I've been interviewing multinationally as well, they usually don't receive feedback. So I always ask whether you receive feedback, what is the type of feedback you receive, how do you react to those problems, how did you give feedback to your colleagues and your manager and your direct reports if it's a manager role. And usually people can come up with any specific examples, because it's not a requirement, it's not an important aspect of building an organization in their environment, in their company.
So let's change that. Awesome. I think we need to touch on scaling in the context of startups. I think what we usually read about is that when a startup is about the size of a tribe or a smaller village, then the product market fit has already been established and the data has been gathered, so it's time to scale if it's the right time for that company. But I think you have a different metaphor.
No, I think it's something similar. I was curious because I mentioned it because I don't remember I mentioned. Maybe I did. So when think of scaling, you see a lot of product companies being successful in the early days. Like they deliver like amazing products in the early days. Consumer starts to pick that up, and then there's a huge growth. And then what you see is like those companies start to slow down. My personal example was very refreshing. So I worked for Skyscanner at that time. I was in Edinburgh where the headquarters was, and after hours I went to a pub having a lunch, drink, whatever. And I had my badge on my shirt, and the guy in the pub asked me like, "Hey, are you working for Skyscanner?" I said, "Yeah, I do." "Oh, that's great. Can I have a question?" Sure, go ahead. "What are these 400 people doing at that big office? Your website hasn't changed for 4 years." And I wanted to have the argument, but actually it was the case. Like 400 people were working at that time, maybe about 600 at that time. But the speed of iteration is always slowing down when you reach a scale, because there are a lot of different problems. How you make decisions can start to slow down. There's a lot of different things that you have to take care of. It previously was not a problem legally and all the other pieces. And my view, and this is the view I mentioned when I had the talk with István about joining, is my view is that this has to change. So if you accept that like you will be slowing down as you go forward, then you will slow down. If you like set the bar that you don't want to slow down, and you are aspired and motivated to prove that you can have a setup where speed can be maintained on the same level, maybe even improve if you scale, then you might reach that level. But if you're not shooting for that, then definitely won't reach that. And the analogy I'm look for and usually stand in an argument is, so assuming you are on building a settlement, so you're on your own, you're a farm, you have a small family, and you are building a settlement there, and you are growing vegetables, and you have some animals as well, because that's how you survive the winter and every day, and there's no one else there, and your productivity is okay, you can feed the family, but in terms of like GDP or like raw productivity, it's low. And assuming that you have a new neighbor because someone comes across, and ignore that there are fights and these kind of things in these situations. So everybody is friendly, everybody is supportive. So what they do is they share the work. So if someone is ill, then they take it over, so the vegetables can grow. One of the family is more specialized in growing vegetables, the other is more specialized in feeding animals and growing animals, and the productivity increases. And if you extrapolate that to a certain level, well, you think of cities. Cities has the biggest amount of productivity, the highest amount of productivity overall. And if you compare to countryside, and I'm not talking about quality and like not the specific details, but in terms of productivity, the cities has a massive amount of productivity levels, and their scale is like amazing. And the question is, how come cities end up being super productive while startups end up being less productive as they grow? And my answer is that in big cities, if you are a butcher, like slicing and selling food, no one tells you how to slice, and you can make your own decision. You have a very strong connection to that shop, because maybe you are the owner, maybe you know the owner, you've been the first hire, but you have a strong responsibility to deliver a good work, because if you're not doing that, then something is going to customers will complain. And there's no one, like the prime minister is not telling you how to slice that ham because he doesn't know. And the problem that can happen easily is if you don't recognize that those teams who are in the front line should make their own decisions. And this can happen easily if you start to scale. The CEO, the individuals, the people who've been there, the single most important individuals, the highly opinionated people are still making those decisions. And what happens that their level of understanding of the problem decreases because they're much further away from the problem. They just receive a subset of the question, should I slice this ham this way? And oh yeah, you should, because we used to slice this way. And the fact is that the environment has changed. The problem is different, but you are not there. And I don't have problem with micromanagement. I think micromanagement is not a bad thing. The problem is that those decisions are awful. So if you are further away from the front line, then and you are still making a decision that affects the day-to-day life of someone else who has a much better view on making this decision, then you shouldn't make those decisions. So like making a lot of decisions, confident decisions, it's okay. Maybe in certain scenarios, a CEO has to make a lot of decisions. But if those decisions end up being terrible, that's the problem. And usually what the case is that micromanagement ends up making a lot of bad decisions. That's the conclusion. And if you go ahead from 20 people to 40, you need to make decisions differently. And the people who are in the front line have to make these decisions. And you go to 100, again, you have to have a different kind of behaviors, like how to make people, how to help people making these decisions, how to help them being comfortable, taking responsibility, and how to align what is a good decision, what's a bad decision, how to learn from the mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And this is where I think startups, scale-ups, and the big enterprise start to differ a lot from cities, where prime minister is not making a decision on very certain details. Like they also make mistakes, like whether it's a good environment they build or not bad, but the very details and the very big decisions are always done by the frontline workers.
Right. So if I hear it correctly, you are definitely making a case for enabling your colleagues to be able to make good decisions with being responsible for their own decisions.
Yeah. And it's making decision is a word, like it's so easy to make a lot of decisions, but in practice people are inexperienced to make decisions and make decisions like fast and stick to these decisions and learn from those decisions and acknowledge that they made the decision and not pointing out like, oh yeah, this decision has been made by someone else. And this was the second phase. So when I joined Shapr, it was around the seeding time, like 20 people, and we're moving closing to a Series A investment at that time, and the behaviors changed, the growth changed just after we closed the Series A round, and my role has changed a lot. I started to hire people into management as well, so it was not just me talking people, but also a lot of different people joined for the purpose of fostering this environment. And I no longer was a single individual making the decisions around whether we should do this or whether that's bad or not, but a lot of people also helping me and working together to creating this environment. And that's again a shift in tendency, because it's much more difficult to message things through other individuals. It's much more difficult for me to understand how the organization is working, whether the frontline workers are actually happy about the development we made in the organization, whether they know actually there is work improving. In early days, they don't have, like when I joined in Shapr, no one has really an idea what management is about. Even though a lot of people had experience working in different companies, they had either a very bad articulation of what management is, or they didn't have an idea what they should expect from management. And if you leave it that way, then no one will have ever an expectation from you. But if you are very specific that all the problems should be solved, and if someone is not feeling happy, motivated, and enabled in the organization, then it's your problem. Then people will come to you that I've seen someone not being happy in their job, and can you help with that? And you can set a practice that you listen to these people and you actually try to make that disappear. And if you set a practice where people are raising problems and no one is doing anything about it, then there will be a practice of not raising these problems, because who cares? But if there's a practice that you establish in the early days and you see that behavior, that someone has a problem, they can talk to someone who has actually tool sets to recognize. It's not always true that someone is like always right or wrong. Maybe the individual has a different perspective and he has to be educated, he has to walk it through like why that is a wrong conclusion of the current environment, why we should do instead of that or instead of that doing something else. But it's also work you have to see. And that's the reason I think thinking of management early on is important. I enjoy being in a scrappy organization. So I'm a hacker in my soul. I tend to be my code and the things I write. I still code a lot, always in Shapr. I stopped doing that for a while, but after work I still enjoy doing coding myself. But my work is scrappy, and that's okay. But if you keep your organization very scrappy and you scale, problems will arise. If there's no one solving those problems, then problems will cause fire. If there's fire, people will leave, and you will those departures will cause another fire, and which you will be unable to put off, and it will affect your ability to produce high quality products overall.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and overall everything bad.
Yeah.
With that said, I have a question here about how you scale your engineering management structure together with the scaling of the entire organization. But let me just tell you what I heard from you, and you can tell me if it's correct or not, because it seems like in the beginning, you kind of have to make decisions in the leadership quickly and firmly to steer the organization in the ideal direction, whatever that might be. And then gradually, you need to go into more of a coaching phase where you help the people make the decisions that are best for the company as a whole, and kind of show them a mirror and point out to them what they have done right or what they have done wrong. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in how you echoed back what I said. In terms of behaviors, I think there's a constant work around understanding what is good and what is bad. So I'll give you specific examples. So you have a culture that accepts politics to be discussed and being used across the organization. It might be good, might not be good. But if you don't have a view on this and you just let it happen, then it will lead to a setup where people disagree with each other. That like should like the politics be involved or not involved. And I have a lot of views on politics. I'm not an expert, but I have discussions. But usually we don't do that in Shapr, for example. We are super keen on being transparent and making sure that the whole organization is excited, motivated, committed to fight for this attribute is not easy, because it just doesn't happen just out of nowhere. If you write down that this company is going to be transparent, the company is not going to be transparent. If the CEO starts to not tell the numbers and whether there was a failure in terms of delivery, then people won't know, and the people will start to think that this is completely normal. So your role is also to understand whether the behaviors we see are great or not bad or bad. And it's not a decision that you make, okay, that was bad or that was good, but you have to work with people whether this is useful or not, and help them understand that they have a role in catering the organization. It's not just like if someone is slacking about politics, then you publicly blame them. It's a question mark that you discuss together with all the people and help them understand and foster what you want to achieve. And like if you continue this way, this is going to happen. If you are not prepared for all hands meetings, and you go there and you don't ask questions, you don't expect the individual who is standing there presenting to answer tough questions, those presenters won't prepare. It's your role as an individual to ask the tough questions. And if nobody cares much whether those questions are answered, then people won't answer the question. They won't prepare, and the amount of information they will share with the audience are going to degrade over time. Again, not answering specifically the question you had, but yes, the decisions like start to deviate in how those are made. I'm still making a lot of decisions as far as I think, but those are not like a specific decision like that affects something tomorrow. It's more about how we think about problems, how we plan ahead a quarter, whether we plan ahead a year, and what are things that is important. If we are seeing problems, should we prioritize that problem above anything else or not? Here I usually have a very strong view, and I expect people to disagree with me, because a lot of cases I have wrong views. But if you set up an environment where people can't disagree or don't want to disagree or not willing to disagree, then you will end up being alone, and you make the decisions and they will be either bad or wrong. And lately it's going to be bad.
Right. Thank you. With that said, you said that you are around 100 right now?
So what I know is we reached the 100 limit in Jira. And maybe we haven't removed some old employees, I don't know, but we are definitely between 90 and 100 somewhere. But given we are hiring a couple of people each month, it changes day by day. And if you ask like whether the amount of people we hired or the amount of people who already started, that's going to be a different, like maybe like 5 or 6 people already hired, but they haven't yet started. So there's always a difference in those numbers. We are around 100.
Right. So how do you plan on growing? What's your projected growth for the next half a year, whatever time frame you...
I put together just like, I have this big Excel sheet of my like future growth. I usually predict or estimate the growth for a year up front, like how things are going to look like. And now we see the end year with 177 people altogether in the company. So from growing from 90 or 100 to 177, it's more like a 80% increase. But overall, from January, it's basically again doubling the headcount. Whether it's going to be possible, I don't know. So there are a lot of inputs to this. So whether we can actually hire these people and find these people,
right.
We are still confident we are not changing the bar. So it's there's also a notion of like, if you want to hire a lot of people, you have to decrease the quality, because the first 10 is great and then the second 10 is okay, and then you start to hire, I don't know, less qualified people, and that's a wrong way of approaching the problem. You have to have a very explicit bar of how we want to hire. You can go lower in terms of experience and you help those engineers to grow, but if you start to hire B+ people, those B+ people will hire C people, and then that will because you have to have a very consistent bar of what is good and what is bad, and stick to that. So in terms of growth, what is even more scaring is that the biggest part of this growth is going to go into engineering. So we have around 40 something people in engineering today, and that's going to be more than 90 end of the year. So it's more than doubling from March numbers. And again, it might happen that we won't be able to hire. It might happen that we started to see some problems arising. So if I ask all my people in the engineering organization, like whether they receive enough feedback about their work, and if people start to say no, then it's signal that something is wrong. So we have to slow down. If the amount of issues we start to make, the quality of the product start to decrease, it's also a question mark whether we are prepared for that level of growth. And we have to be super analytical of what we expect from this growth, and what are the benchmarks which you need to keep in terms of understanding the health of the organization. And I'm super afraid how this is going to play out, but at the same time, I'm confident that we know at the time whether this is the right time to push further or just to slow down. Sometimes we pull the brake because there were problems we had to solve before we could go to the market again. Now we are on like full speed on hiring again, but we might reach an inflection point that we haven't foreseen before. It might happen that we are great in hiring engineers, but we fall behind hiring designers or product managers. And you hire a bunch of engineers and no one is telling them what to do and how to do and what is great and what is not. Then you will end up having a lot of people who ship things that are not going to be used, and no one is happy about building just for the sake of building. They keen to see the output and value of their work, and because of that you need people to help them
right.
a lot. So I was afraid reaching the 100 barrier, and now I'm more and more confident, and the confidence is coming from actual like seeing that the stage we reached today, where we have 40 something engineers working together with high quality. I did an exercise just this week and last week. I talked to all the people. I haven't had a very, very, very detailed relationship. So like probably I work with 20 something people day by day in one way to another. We see each other meeting or join a stand up or in one way. But there are a couple of people who I don't have a very tight and close relationship because they joined recently. I've been participating in their interview, but I haven't talked to them since. So I went to these people and I asked like similar question: how are you enjoying? Did I paint too shiny picture in the interview funnel, and that turned out to be not true? Or is there anything that I was selling or we were selling as a company that is not clear, not great? Do you receive enough feedback about your work? I asked the same question for everyone, and I was super happy to receive a very confident answer, a positive answer in most cases. There are problems I found to exist that I haven't realized existing, and I will work on those, but overall the motivation, the health, the level of feedback that people receive, and the whole like atmosphere that was painted through these discussions were great, and I was super happy to hear that. That is like increases the confidence that we can go further. But when you have 40 people in the company and half of them joined in the last 6 months, and you want to hire another 40, and someone needs to mentor those 40 people, like you can choose the 20 who've been here for more than 6 months, or you can choose the one that have been here for 3 months, and there is a balance there. And if you hire a lot of people, this ambitious plan is the top that one company can achieve in a healthy way. Otherwise, you will spend up either too much time in interviewing, and you are not building software, so the most experienced software engineers and managers or people are going to like spend 90% of the time in interviewing, or you don't spend a lot of time interviewing, so just hire everyone, and then you deal with the consequences afterwards. So that's a problem. So again, mentoring is also a big question mark, like how people get experienced and get confidence on how to do great things. And in this environment where everybody is remote, and in our company we can't come to the office, so the whole office is closed, everybody is remote. It's a lot more difficult,
challenge
than we thought before.
With that said, do you differentiate hiring engineering managers and developers? And what do you do to scale the engineering management roles together with the number of engineers?
Now, this is one of the most difficult questions I had to think about, and so the problem here is that especially in this region, there isn't a very established good engineering management culture. So people doing engineering management are usually the people who are less successful in being software engineer, or weren't happy in that environment, and there is no one helping them understanding what good or how to behave as an engineering manager, what is good and what is bad. And therefore most of the people we want to hire don't have that level of experience in engineering management. The second difficult thing is that you are hiring engineering managers to help people, software engineers, to become better, but you are not great in software development on their own, then how do you establish your trust? How do you help the software engineers to trust their manager to go to them with questions if there is no such a confidence in that relationship? So it would be easy to say that we look for people who are less qualified in software engineering, or they've been doing software engineering for a while, but they switched to something else, and now we look for only management requirements. And that would be an easy choice, but we decided not to go that way. And that affects our ability to hire engineering managers, definitely. So one of the most difficult role to close. So for now, engineering management is basically a similar level of requirements in terms of technical depth as a software engineer. We hire people with senior bar for engineering management, senior bar in technical expertise into management, and they do we have a homework. So every single software engineer interview starts with a homework exercise, and including the engineering manager, they also complete the homework exercise. We look for different nuances in terms of how they design software rather than how they optimize the code itself. But the exercise itself is very similar. The level of thinking, the depth of experience are very similar. And we spend a lot more time on culture. My interviews are usually focusing on leadership behaviors and management. And I'm spending an hour understanding them, how they solve different problems with people in their organization. But in terms of technical requirements, we're still on the size, on maturity where we think it's important. in comparison to Skyscanner, which was a much larger scale, that was still an important aspect. So engineering management were great engineers as well, but we started to deviate from already like it's more important to be better in management. And even if you haven't done a lot of hands-on work in the past like couple of years, but you have the basic understanding and holistic view of software engineering, then might be a good individual for engineering management. But in Shapr at this scale with 100 people, we are still super consistent on having a very high bar for technical expertise, and that limits of people, because we look for people who are great software engineers and great managers together. And in an environment in city in Budapest where there are very few companies taking engineering management seriously, and therefore very few companies educating their people doing engineering management better. So what I see is it's going to be a tough journey, and I'm still confident we should approach the problem in this way. And it would have been much easier not to do that. Like there's a great pressure in terms of hiring, and engineering management is an important part there. But if we are not unable to hire or alternative grow people from inside, then we will slow down in terms of hiring, because I'm not confident to just hire people without making sure that those people can get feedback about their work, and qualitative and interesting feedback.
Wow, I hear a lot of things, and it's really exciting to hear you talk about really setting the bar high. In everything that you have mentioned, it seems to me that you want to make a great product, and you want to keep on building a great product and making it ever better, so that the users can come back to you with great feedback about how the product has been becoming better. And now you're telling us about how engineering managers have to have this very high level of technological knowledge. And you also mentioned your Excel sheet about the projected growth of the number of people in the company. Just give our listeners a few words about the preparations. Right now, how do you prepare for your projected growth? And if you can share some of those plans with us, that would be great.
Yeah. I think we did a lot of great things in the past 6 months. So 6 months ago, we didn't have a plan. We just went forward with numbers and what was great and what wasn't. And the reason why it's hard, because I, as an engineering manager or like VP of engineering, I was like, tell me how many people you are going to hire. And then question mark is like what are we going to build for these people? Like what is going to be the next 6 months or 12 months plan? And then the VP of product comes to me and like, I can tell you what I want to build if you tell me how long they will take. And this is always this argument of not knowing something but predicting. But if the prediction is based on not knowing much, then it's going to be tweaked anyway. And you have to decompose this complex problem. And the only way to do that is to always move one piece further. It's like, I think we can hire this amount of people and this is what we can build. And then the product leadership comes like, okay, but this is not enough. Okay, then why do you think it's not enough? Because this is something that we should do somewhere. Is it that more important than anything else with it? This listed here? Yeah, that's more important. Okay, can we push out something? No, and through these discussions, you get a lot of different details. And I just talked to one of my colleagues, and he shared a great example. So estimation, prediction, planning is similar to zooming into a map. So if you are asked, for example, how long is the shore through whole Spain, then if you start to measure from the zoomed out view, it's going to be, okay, like 600 kilometers. I don't know exactly. I'm not good in geography. But if you start to zoom in, that you realize these are not straight lines.
Right.
These are just like lines going all across the shore. And what you assume to be 600 kilometers, it turns out to be 1,000 or 2,000 or 6,000 because of the complexity. And this is exactly how projections and estimation work. However, if you don't go ahead and try to estimate things, then you won't know whether those estimations were wrong or whether this is like whether should go even further to understand the details. Usually I think of product as like, well, how many coins you have and how you want to spend these coins. We will figure out what we can build with these coins, but if you have just 10 coins and to build something, then it sets the expectation. You won't spend usually you don't spend 100 if you had just 10 coins, but if you start building and you realize there's a lot more to do because you have a lot more coins, and the value is going to be a lot better, so ROI wise it's working out, then you can allocate more coins, but you start to allocate coins to do those deliveries. So we started to work together with HR, product and engineering, and we started to put together this puzzle, and we put together what we want to build, and we allocated number of users, what number of employees, how much we think needed to deliver this. And then we ended up with 260 people. And then went back, okay, how am I going to hire this amount of people? How we get this? Like we have to reduce. And then we also went back, like, okay, we are only okay or confident to hire this amount of people. We should remove a lot of different things from the plan. And then it started to shape the whole discussion of like what's good and what's bad, what shouldn't be considered important, what should be considered important. So nowadays I have an Excel sheet. The Excel sheet has this headcount, like how many people we try to hire next quarter, how many positions we try to hire this quarter. And every time if I go like further, I always zoom in for the next couple of weeks or months. So for this quarter, I have a very specific view of the open positions. For next quarter, I have a very specific view on what are the roles we want to close. For the roles after that quarter, so the Q3 and 4 this year, I have a zoomed out view of, I think we're going to hire 20 people into engineering. It might happen that we won't be able to hire 20 in the previous quarter, so we have to rework the plan. But I'm thinking of similar to chess master. I'm not sure whether you play chess. Do you play chess?
I have played chess.
So yeah, when someone writes an algorithm in chess, how it works is usually plays out the whole set of combination and chooses always the one that leads to the best outcome of at the end. How chess masters think, and I am not a chess master, I just heard people talking about chess, is they always think of like the next step is what is the step they need to make to get more information about making a better decision. And my philosophy is very similar. So I'm thinking of them as next steps of what I should do to know more about what I need to do afterwards. And usually this helps me to set the specifics. And then every week I go into this sheet and if you hired someone who was meant to be a C++ engineer. We looked for someone else, but we hired C++ engineers. So I had to exchange people because now we had a C++ role that we closed, and we have now another role that we need to open. And then it changes some of the nuances in the plan. And whenever we created a team that was in the plan, and that team is existing, then I have a lot better information whether what is going to be the next team I'm going to create, because that is already ticked. And then I can work out the details of those requirements, whether there's already some people in the company who can be moved around because they are not working on that project that was super important that time, or we train already an individual who can take over jobs so that senior individual can go to the next team. So always going into a lot more granularity for the next couple of things I do. And if you are in the early days, usually your perspective looking ahead is just like a couple of weeks or months. And as you scale, you have to look further. You have to know what you need to do today in order to reach the number that you have at the end of the day. Because if you need to hire 60 people this year, you should have hired 2 recruiters 2 months ago. And if you wanted to build that thing 6 months from now, you should already start working on the product ideas today. And if you don't do it, that won't happen. And you have to be crystal clear. Like you have the plan, you have like this is what you have to achieve in 1 year, and you start to work backwards. Like what do I need to do today to reach that goal? And if there's nothing you should do at this time to reach that goal because it's further away and it's not affecting, then it's either you don't have the visibility, or second, it's something that you deal with later on, and you don't need to focus on that. So I have a big table with numbers. I have a big table of how the current organization looks like. So all the names in the different teams, all the positions I try to fill for those specific teams. So all the positions are assigned to specific teams. And I also have a copy of this state for 3 months from now and 6 months from now. And for the names, I don't have yet the name because we haven't yet hired them. There's a blank something, but I see the number of people and the complexity. And if I see visually, in this team I have like allocated 2 senior people, like two inexperienced people and 4 new hires, how is that going to fly? Because like inexperienced people and the ratio of inexperience and the level of people who's still about to hire, it's not going to work. And then I play around, and sometimes you break the level of seniority on that team, and then you pull the brake and remove the position from your post job site. So that can happen. So, and the most important part is you don't do this alone. Like you share this with the team, you share with the leadership team, you share with the whole company. You expect people to ask questions. You expect people to challenge you, and when they challenge you, you learn, and you incorporate that. If people don't have the confidence that this is going to fly, you have to understand where is that coming from, because they already pissed off with a lot of code reviews, a lot of interviews, and that you should something do against it, because if you already have problems and you add more people to that problem will be bigger. For example, one of the problems we had is interviewing. So there were certain people who did a lot of interviews, and I looked into the data point. There are 2 things. One, it took a lot of time for an individual to pass or go through the whole interviewing funnel, like more than 40-50 days, which is way beyond the benchmark. So people disappeared from the funnel because you are too slow. And the second, the people were disappointed because they wanted to build software and not talk to people all the time. So I set a very specific goal. No one in the company should have more than 2 interview-related exercise in 1 week. It can be a homework review, it can be an interview. It usually takes like 2 hours. So two sessions and 2 people, then it's like 4 hours. It's still manageable. There are some people, like myself and recruitment, and there are senior people who do more than that. CEO does a lot of interviews, culture interviews mainly. But average software engineers, they usually are limited to have only 2. And if there is a signal that you cannot have the interview because there's not enough capacity, it signals that you have to pull in more people in training. And if you realize this at the time there's a problem, you can solve it immediately, because you have to train those people, and it takes another 2 months to train them at least. And if you don't have the senior people because the balance has decreased, then it's a problem. And it was a problem in our case. So I had to go to people and hey man, I think we are in a difficult situation. So 1, we should slow down a bit so we can train these people. Second, we should ask help from the people doing the interview to do a little more for another 1 month or so, and explain them what the problem is. And if they know the problem, they know the purpose, then they can align and they can help. They can do like, okay, I can do a lot more, I understand now. But if they are unclear about why you do this, they just get the sense of urgency, then they won't behave that way. If they get the sense of purpose, like what is the reasoning, and they have all the context, then they can conclude to the same decision that they invest more in interviewing, because that's the most important thing they can do at this time. And it's going to decrease if they help other members to get experience, and then they do a lot of work on helping people, helping other colleagues to get practice.
All right, thank you for elaborating on that one. We are kind of out of time here, but
I mentioned to you that I'm talking a lot.
That's fine. We are here to learn from you. But I have, first of all, I have an observation, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like as the VP of engineering, you have to do, or you tend to take on a lot of work where you project, look into the future, set the vision, kind of create a strategy. You also go on to some of the granular work of the numbers, of interviewing people individually. And meanwhile, to me, it kind of sounds like you are always iterating and checking back and kind of making sure that you can see the consequences of your actions.
Yeah. That's true.
Sounds like it's a really full plate of work.
Yeah, so a few things. I have amazing people. We have amazing people in the whole company, in management as well, who taken on a lot. Like whatever I say, like I do, there's a lot that I get help with because they do the heavy lifting. For example, 2-3 months ago, I was directly managing 20 people. It was an awful quality was awful because I could not give the right amount of feedback to these people or some people. So people I work with directly day to day, I had a good observation and understanding what is bad, and whenever I've seen something they had to know about, I was able to tell. But there were certain people I hadn't had that level of relationship because they were coding all day and I was doing something else. And the level of feedback I could give them, could give them was low. So I worked really hard to hire these people who can help them to give the feedback and replace the work, because the work I did wasn't that good. So one thing is it's just not a one-man job. The second, yes, I think one of the traits engineering managers in particular should have is a lot of throughput in terms of processing information, reading a different, I'm reading basically all the Slack messages, like a couple of thousands a day. I'm reading a lot of content that are produced, design documents, the product plans, engineering reports, a lot of it, like recruitment reports. I processed, for example, the numbers for recruitment, like how we do different things, and ask questions around those. And you have to be super fast in processing information. That's one of the main traits. And the second is that you do an interview, then you go to record a podcast, and then you go back and you process again recruitment numbers, and then you read the design document, and you write a report for investors, and then you have an argument with the CEO, a CPO about how we solve the next 2 months plan, and then it turned out that one of the product release was buggy, and you have to have understanding how to resolve that. And I'm not making any decisions in these kind of cases. I'm observing and helping whenever someone doesn't have the confidence. I'm just helping and advising on where they could look or could get help from. So context switches and the amount of different kind of inputs can affect your focus during the day is just huge. You have to get used to that. And I remember 2 weeks ago, I sent a message to executive team that this is the level where I'm unable to process every single information that happens. There's a lot more I should prioritize, but it was exciting to read previously, and I think it helped me to frame the understanding of the companies, like how they make decisions. But now I have to skip some of those because it's just I'm unable to read to that amount of lines and documents every day.
Right. Thank you. So you also have to kind of create your own stop signs for yourself, it seems. All right. Thank you so much. We have covered huge ground, I think. We talked about hiring, and we talked about values, and we talked about communications and feedback. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
The CEO mentioned that I have to mention that this was the room where Shapr3D has started off. I don't know the exact nuances, the setup, but the company, Coding Sense and the Shapr3D has some common grounds with the CEOs knowing each other in the back. So it turned out that this very room was the room of the roots of Shapr3D. So it's interesting connection.
Awesome. Yeah, on common ground, quite literally. Perfect. Thank you so much for coming to join us. My guest today was Ákos Kapui, VP of Engineering from Shapr3D. And we talked about hypergrowth and how to manage people and how to teach people and how to create new processes, and just an amazing amount of work. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the invite.
And dearest listeners, thank you for keeping up with us. I am Karolina Tóth, and I am hoping to get your feedback because you have been so kind and sharing a lot of feedback with me. And I also hope to see you next time.
Thanks for staying with Level Up Engineering. If you enjoyed this podcast, so will your friends. Share this episode on your favorite social networking platform. To stay up to date with our content, follow Level Up Engineering on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast. Brought to you by Coding Sans, a software development agency building web applications with Angular and Node.js. Check them out at codingsans.com.